Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. This week we're going to see if we can build the 2-speed gearbox for the 3Racing X Reel. Right then, bag 2. There's the motor with the ludicrously long leads. It's 35 turn and should be good enough to get the truck going. The drive shaft and gearbox plastic parts all feel very solid. Now a few of the bits have broken away from the trees already, and just like the previous bag, none of them are marked with numbers. So there's going to be a bit of hunt apart while we're building. The metal parts bag with the gears has lots of nicely finished bits. There's an aluminium adapter for the spur gear. The gearbox gears and pinion all feel very heavy, like steel rather than aluminium, so they should last a good long time. Now the motor mount is aluminium, but that's okay as it's not going to see any wear. It's quite a nice little part. We've got a few stamped aluminium parts. Now the anodizing does look pretty good, but the colour isn't great. I think they were going for a nice orange or bronze, but it's ended up looking a bit brown in some lights. Now since we seem to be gathering all the parts for this page of the build, we might as well add the inside out spur gear and the large bit of the gearbox casing. From the last little sub bag that has all the small metal parts in, we need one of the shafts. It's the middle length one of the three. The other two, along with the shift rod, can go in another pot. While we're at it, we might as well separate out all the bearings so the pot with the screws in is a little less busy. All the bearings are nice rubber sealed ones that feel quite smooth. There's no wobble I can feel, so they should last a good long while as long as they don't get damp and go rusty. Just the screws and small bits now. There's the M3 grub screw that we're going to fit into the pinion right away so it can't get lost. Next there's an M4 E-clip. Now watch out for these as some of them don't have the little lugs well formed and don't positively clip in. Not a big deal though, as you can get a bag with loads in for £1 or so. Now for the pin. Now these are a bit of a sticking point with the kit. There's 3 different lengths, 8, 9 and 9.8 millimeters. And without carefully measuring them, it would be very easy to get the wrong one. In some cases you might get away with it, in others it's going to come up short or even jam up the mechanism if they're too long. And lastly we need 8 M3x6s and 4 M3x8s. Looks like the first job is to install the pinion on the motor. Easy enough, except we don't know how far the pinion should be on the shaft. And worse still, once the motor's installed in the gearbox we won't be able to see what the clearances look like. For now, we'll just nip up the grub screw with the pinion somewhere near flush with the end of the shaft. Motor mounts now, and we've got a 16-tooth pinion, so we want to use the holes between the ones marked 15 and 17. It's extremely easy to get the wrong holes, and the markings end up against the motor, so you really have to make sure when you pop the screws in. It's also quite possible to get one of the screws in the right hole and the other offset by one. Install and nip up the 2 M3x6s and we can move on. Next the plate gets fitted with 2 more M3x6s. These would be a good place to use a little bit of thread lock, however we can't be completely sure the pinion and spur mesh is going to be okay, so for now we'll just install them dry. Shaft and spur gear next. We'll need the shaft and the spur along with the adapter and the 2x9mm pin. The adapter slides over the shaft and lines up with a hole. You should get a nice clear view right the way through. To keep it in place we'll need to slide in the pin, which is easier said than done. The pin is a rather tight fit. Now it might be tempting to drill out the hole to make it easier, but having it super tight is a good thing. We won't have any slop in the system and the pin definitely isn't going to fall out. I managed to get it in most of the way with some pliers, but ended up winding it in the rest of the way with an old machine vise. To fit the spur we've got 4 screws that thread into the adapter. Now it's aluminium, so we need to use a little bit of thread lock just to make sure that they won't work their way loose later. We only need a tiny bit, and since we've got the plastic spur gear we need to wipe away any excess so it can't attack the plastic. Now we just pop the spur over the adapter and install the 4 M3x6s. They just need to be bottomed out plus a little tweak. What we don't want to do is crush the plastic too much. Now it looks like it's spinning nice and true, so it should work a treat when it's all put together. Next we've got the housing. Now we need to fit the 2 aluminium plates to the sides. The only thing to watch out for is the housing does have a right way up. The plates will quite happily fit, making the gearbox end up upside down. The diagram is good enough to get it right though, just carefully match it up. The plates are fitted with the last M3x8 screws. Take it easy when screwing them in. Like most of the screws in the kit, they're rather tight to do up. With the friction, heat build-up can be a bit of an issue, so tighten them a couple of turns at a time until they're just snug so the plates feel nice and solidly mounted. Now it's just a case of popping a 5x10x4 bearing in the end of the housing and sliding in the shaft, only to find that something's catching when you spin it. Now I didn't really like this, so I went and shimmed it to take up the slack. I did the same on the other side too, between the bearing and the E-clip that we haven't fitted yet. I had it running very smoothly. However, what I ended up finding was once the rest of the gearbox goes together, the final housing part takes almost all the float out of the system, adding clearance behind the spur, making it all run freely anyway. I ended up taking the whole gearbox apart and removing the shims, as at best they weren't doing anything, and at worst they were causing some minor binding when the housing came together. The TLDR of this is at this stage the gearbox feels very catchy, but don't worry about it. We just need to pop the E-clip on and we're done with page 4 of the manual. You can see there's some shims under the E-clip. These were the ones that ended up getting removed. Okay, next we've got the rest of the gears on the spur gear shaft, and we've got the shaft with the dog clutch to assemble. But it's currently just gone 10 PM Friday night, and I'm still typing out the script. If I keep going, I'm not going to have enough time to get it all edited and uploaded for Sunday. So rather than push it, I'm going to leave it here and see if I can get the rest of the gearbox finished up next week. As always, thanks for watching, like if you liked, subscribe if you want to know when the next video is up, and of course leave a comment if there's something on your mind. Bye guys!